All right, welcome in Business Relationship Sports with CA and KJ. My guy has come through for episode number 2.
Good to see you.
Today we're going to be talking about a host and a plethora of topics. So we're going to get into some NFL, we're going to get into some college football, we're going to get into some NBA, some college volleyball, a little bit of business, including real estate. We're going to hear KJ's playlist and 2 songs of artists who he's been listening to lately. And then we're going to close it up with a little bit of pop culture, what's happening in the world of that. So to jump straight into it, right now in the NFL, we've got 2 undefeated teams. So the Kansas City Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings. One team, a lot of people are not so surprised to see undefeated because they're the defending Super Bowl champions. And although they've had some injuries, they have who a lot of people feel like is the best player in the world right now, Patrick Mahomes.
No doubt.
And then they've got another team who not very many people felt like would be undefeated, but has been playing really well. Their quarterback's been getting it done, put himself in the MVP race. They have a lot of other great players around him. But let's talk a little bit about your feelings on those 2 teams and being undefeated right now.
I definitely think the Chiefs are kind of figuring it out. Like, I think it's very similar to like a Tom Brady situation. Everybody knows that Tom Brady didn't have too many elite offensive players around him, but he had a few. And I think that Mahomes is kind of dealing with that right now, where he's kind of losing a few of the really good players, and they're still finding ways to win offensively. That thing's huge to me.
Exactly. Like the Chiefs going from having Rashid Rice having to be their number 1 receiver this year, which was already a question for a lot of people, although he played really well at the end of last season. He came right out guns blazing this season, doing really well, and then they end up having an injury to him, and they've had an injury to their running back, Isaiah Pacheco, who ended up playing so well for them last year. And so for most teams, not only would they not be undefeated, their season would be decimated after losing their number 1 running back and their number 1 wide receiver, but that is why Patrick Mahomes is paid the big bucks. That's why he is labeled, the best quarterback. That's why he's in the MVP race and already becoming a historical quarterback even at a young age. It's, like you said, the Tom Brady effect, being able to take guys who don't have really big names and go, I'm going to make you somebody who can be productive, or even bring in people out of the woodwork who used to have decent names, like a Juju, who used to be coming out of when he was in Pittsburgh early years, like a big-time receiver for them, and then may have fallen off name-wise in the past couple seasons. I mean, the last game he played was so good. He's got Xavier Worthy, who's like the fastest guy ever at the Combine, looking like a veteran, catching balls, deep balls, running him on some of those trick plays, inside routes and everything.
Making
And then, of
people
course,
better.
Travis Kelce, who started off the season a little bit slow, but as a person who has had to quarterback offenses myself, sometimes that is the way you do it. When you know a team is going to come in and focus in on one guy, you say, okay, I'm going to use it as a decoy. I'm going to get these other guys going. I'm going to get their beak wet. I'm going to get them going comfortable early in the season. And then when it's time to go to my guy, I'm going to my guy. And so I've not seen somebody in this era who does it better than Patrick Mahomes since we've had Tom Brady. And before that, I followed a couple quarterbacks like the Elways, the Mannings, the Marinos, the Aikmans. But Patrick Mahomes is something else. He is just raising his game consistently. And the wild part is he's not even playing well. I'm pretty sure right now he's six touchdowns, 6 interceptions, but still undefeated. So that's crazy. Talk a little bit more about the Viking situation. I have not been super familiar with the Vikings outside of Justin Jefferson, but what's going on in Minnesota?
I just know that the Vikings have been finding a way to beat playoff teams, and I think that's a huge thing that they've been paying attention to. They're barely winning, but they're beating teams that have been in the playoffs. They're beating teams that have been in contention, and I think they're just a sleeper team right now. But maybe they got the team chemistry. Maybe they're just playing super well. They got a few players that are stepping out, doing amazing, but nobody was expecting them to be undefeated at all.
What's your feeling on going undefeated? Again, everybody, every year, if there's a team who goes 3-0, they're talking about this whole concept of undefeated. It hasn't been done since the Dolphins, so many years ago, in the 70s, I believe it was. But going undefeated in today's day and age, I'm not going to say it's not realistic. It just hasn't happened, right? You got close with the Patriots when they had Randy Moss, but having gone undefeated. But if it's you, if you're a head coach of a team, if you're a top player on a team, do you even want to go undefeated? For you, what's your feeling?
Period, you want to go undefeated. There's nobody who does not want to go undefeated. The problem is that you don't want to do it like the Patriots did against the Giants, where they went undefeated, went all the way to the Super Bowl, and then they freaking lost.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was the helmet catch?
Exactly. Exactly.
The helmet catch by, I think, David Tyree. But if you can, then push for it, right? Then push for history. But I think ideally, especially since it's the NFL, we're not talking about college football where there's fewer games. You want to lose one or two so you find what your weaknesses are, and then you can go into the playoffs and then make that run in the playoffs. In college football, it's a different conversation. You want to go undefeated in college football.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I am share the same sentiment. I think for me, I'd like to see undefeated if I'm a player, if I'm a coach, because you break history, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's done it since blah blah blah. Our team was unblemished. It's such a like bragging right type of situation, but there is some reality to like grown men who play pro sports, like getting comfortable, right? Like you start getting that rhythm, you start getting that flow. Oh, we're unbeatable. Nobody can beat us. Nobody can beat us. And you see that's happening in college too. When they came out with that that Tim Tebow deal, the Florida Gators deal online, same type of situation. They're crushing everybody. They're trying to go undefeated, and then you lose at the wrong time. So trying to go undefeated doesn't necessarily open you up to losing at the wrong time. It's the comfort of being undefeated that might open some people up that way. So I say go for it if you can. But if you had to say which one of these teams is going to lose first, Kansas City Chiefs or Minnesota Vikings?
I think the Vikings will lose first.
Yeah.
It's
so tough because the Chiefs are shorthanded, right? They don't have their number one wide receiver. They don't have their number one running back. But NFL, more so than any other league, is a next man up league, right? And so new guys get new life. Nobody's had video on their new running back since back when he was playing for the Chiefs before, right? Like they're playing with the Browns. So you have a scenario where sometimes a negative can work out to being a positive, because now if Rashid Rice is to come back, I think I heard yesterday that the ideal, you don't want to tear any ligaments in your leg, but the ideal ligament to be able to return sooner is the one that seems to be torn. And then
so this LCL, which I've never heard of before.
which is not the ACL or the MCL. So
I've never heard. Have you ever heard of an LCL?
Yeah, it's like a lateral ligament. So it's within the knee, but it's not as detrimental to you being able to cut and move and that kind of thing. So you don't want anything torn in your knee, but if something's going to be torn, you'd like to have that torn. So
you'd rather have anything torn but an ACL, period.
Yeah.
MCL, meniscus, LCL. This is actually the first time I've heard an LCL injury. I don't even know what that is. Yeah. I was like, because you always hear about an MCL or a meniscus. So
that's the most prevalent.
Probably come back soon.
It's the lateral ligament. We'll see. It's and so many people's bodies are different, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, for example. I think everybody expected his Achilles injury to take like a year and a half or a year, and then he was back in like 5 months, on the field throwing the ball type situation.
That's a bit crazy too.
Yeah.
But I mean, kind of to a certain extent, you can get it. What you'll notice is that when the lower body injuries happen, at least with the NFL players, they're back faster than what you say like an NBA player, because NBA players have to jump,
right?
And NFL players don't,
right?
So a little bit different,
right? So we'll see what happens with these teams, but then also looking at the Jets situation recently, speaking of Aaron Rodgers, the Jets just fired their coach, Robert Saleh. So very unexpected throughout the league. I don't think anybody had seen that coming. The Jets have never fired a coach in the middle of a season. But it just shows you, one, what can happen if you have a brand name quarterback or a brand name player and you're not producing well. And then two, where we are in the current days of society in reference to coaches. So we were just talking about this last night with the NBA, which we'll get to, but you look at a situation with the Lakers where like Darvin Ham literally won the in-season tournament last year as a head coach, and then by the end of the season he's fired.
Give him the boot.
And you look at Robert Saleh, who is just, were we 5 games into the season?
Literally.
5 games into the season, and you are not catching stride with the guy who didn't even play last year. Trying to get back in rhythm, trying to catch a flow, and you're out. So we're not in the mix. We're not there. That could be, simply based on the record. It could be the ownership feels like you're squandering the last couple of years of Aaron Rodgers. It could be a disagreement between the top players and the head coach. It could be that actually the coach has lost the team. You never know what the situation is, but what's your feeling on the firing of a head coach mid-season and specifically in this situation?
The only way that I see you fire somebody in the middle of the season is if you absolutely think that you can turn the team around during that point by even bringing in a new coach.
Right.
Like, otherwise, you might as well keep him through the end. But also on the other side, like, I think his record was like 20-36 or something. Like, the Jets haven't been playing amazingly.
Right.
But I did hear that he was a very good, like a top defensive coach, but offensively he was kind of nowhere to be found,
Right.
which was why I'm thinking that him and Aaron Rodgers ended up butting heads. So, but I'm still not a fan of it. Like, it's got to be pretty bad for you to be like, all right, I'm going to give you the boot midseason.
Yeah. And to me, there just has to be a clear new route. And that's the thing we seem to be getting into in professional sports. And when I say we seem to, I'm bringing up 2 or 3 pieces of sample size. So I'm not going like super deep into sample size, but the trigger is so quick for people to make changes now, where if you look 30 years ago,
Instantly.
you held with it, right? A coach was
Yeah.
a coach of a franchise, whether the franchise was winning or in between or lower. And you could say that's because there was less options, that's because there was less coaches, that's because there was less social media, that's because there was less demand for change, whatever.
Yeah.
There's so much pressure from all these angles now. Like if you're an owner, you have the fans, pressuring you. We need to be winning. Get a
Every
new
day.
coach. Get a new this. Get a new that. You have people within the organization pressuring you, not to mention what people are facing at home. So it's challenging. And if there's anybody who's a believer in, like, if you're going to do your job, you need to do it at a high level, it's me. Like, I don't believe you should be able to maintain a job if you have a losing record. I don't care what your personnel in your roster are. To me, I'm in that camp. However, like, the concept of mid-season is challenging because having been a person who's played on teams, when you go through a training camp and you get in rhythm with a coach and you get in rhythm with a team, and in the middle of the season you switch it, the percentages and chances of you switching out of that, unless you're bringing in somebody legendary,
Slim.
are small. Like, and so you're not, so far, they're not bringing in Bill Belichick. They're not like making a big splash like, hey, let's bring in somebody who's won or proven that they can do this. We're just getting rid of somebody who may have been the issue or may have just been part of the issue. Like, some situations that you see that aren't ideal is Aaron Rodgers didn't even go to the mini camp. Like, if you're coming off of a season of not playing, to me, you don't get to play the card of, well, I've got 4 MVPs and I've got a Super Bowl, so I don't need to show up.
I'll show up when
It's
I want to
like,
show up.
that whole concept, you're already setting the tone for it to be an unideal season and an unideal situation. So if I'm the coach and I have that kind of situation, there's nothing you could do about it. Like, ownership holds the keys to the situation, but that would be disheartening for future coaches to go to a franchise like that. It's like, wait, the quarterback doesn't even have to show up to training camp. There's no accountability for what's happening on that end of things.
Not fully bought
and
in.
I end up being the person who gets, the boot or whatever the case. But that's professional sports now. The leagues are shifting.
Well, also, like, not even just sports, like, in life.
Yeah.
Like, all the jobs now are like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll fire you whenever we want to, at will employment. You're not getting a pension anymore. Like, there's a lot of looseness in, like, sticking with a company. Like, back in the day, somebody would stay and work with a company 20, 30 years, and then they would retire. And now it's like you job hop every 2 or 3 years. It's literally the same thing that's happening in sports now.
Right.
It's completely different.
And so, what are the pros to it? What are the cons to it? Like, naturally, the reason it's happening is because people feel more empowered. They feel like they have more options. They feel like, oh, the grass is greener elsewhere.
I think it's just social media. Like, TikTok, Instagram, like, everything is instant. So it's all microwave. It's like, if you're not coming in being successful right now, then we'll give you the boot and we'll just find someone else. And I think there's a lot more similarities in skill sets now. I think a lot more people have gotten better. And so now it's like, it used to be this big difference in between how good or bad someone was, and now I think it's a lot smaller.
Right.
So you're like, I can give you the boot and I can find someone like just under you or just above you. And so I think that's like kind of a downfall, but also I think a benefit is financially. Like, people move around and they end up in a financial situation where it's better than it was before, and they can make more money. But I don't know. I still like the sticking with one place if you can.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so MVP race in the NFL, it's always quarterbacks right in the mix, but this year you have an interesting scenario. Derrick Henry, who's made a transition. They started off with one game against the Chiefs where it didn't run well, didn't go well, and since then they've been on a tear. The Ravens have just been crushing it. So in that mix, you've got Derrick Henry, you've got Patrick Mahomes, even though his stats haven't been his best. His team is undefeated, and he's making it happen with, less than first-tier players as it pertains to, who was supposed to be the best or whatever the case. You got Sam Darnold in the mix because he's undefeated. You've got the rookie, Jaden Daniels, in the mix.
Sam Darnold.
Yeah, you got a lot of people in that MVP race mix right now. So what are your feelings on how an MVP should be decided in the NFL?
I think it's a combo. Like, it's a combo of how good you are and then also kind of how good your team is. But what, MVP, most valuable player? And so I don't know. It's tough because it depends on what the metric is, because you'll see a lot of good players that are just on teams that aren't good.
Right.
So I think there still should be like a bigger count of literally how good the player is versus what the record is. Because I think what you'll see more is you'll be like, okay, this player is good, but they're not amazing, but their team is playing really well. And then you'll see a number of players that are really good, and then they just don't have the team to back them up. And I think there should be a little bit more weight on how good the player is really playing, even though he may not have a team around him. And remember, in football, you got like 100 people on a team. And it's like a guy is really balling, like helping his team as much as possible. There's only so much he can do.
Yeah, my personal opinion, although I'm not a person who generally believes in adding more trophies and more accolades, I believe it should be meaningful, you know?
Yeah.
What makes things meaningful is there being less of it. So, but that being said, like you said, there's so many players on a football team. So to have one person in the whole league, out of all these players who's said to be that's the person, so many variables have to come into play. And usually the primary one is your team winning, like you said. So my personal opinion is there should be multiple awards. There should be most outstanding offense, most outstanding defense, most outstanding special teams. Like, because a kicker is never going to have the opportunity to win MVP in the way it's set up now. But sometimes
Never.
kickers be that person. Like Adam Vinatieri, back when he was doing it with the Patriots, like this man was like saving situations, you know, coming in with these fudge kicks.
He won like probably 3 Super Bowls for them, like making sure he wasn't missing throughout the game, and then hitting the game winners like on 2 or 3 Super Bowls.
In crazy scenarios, like snowing, you know, no visibility, with wind.
45 yards away, 50 yards
like
away.
Wild. But
I'm
a person
what?
like that doesn't have the opportunity. And then that goes another. Like, you have sometimes pass rushers who are like absolutely killing it. You have people like that situation, like a Micah Parsons on the Dallas Cowboys, who just absolutely changed the game for your team. But because a quarterback touches the ball more, running back touches the ball more, or even a wide receiver, they're naturally going to get.
Offense in general, like they always shade it to the person who's directly scoring points.
Right.
So that's also a rough part about it.
Yeah. So if I'm, you know, making the rules or whatever the case, there would be an offensive most valuable or most outstanding or most valuable player, most highly touted, skilled, whatever. And then there would be a defense, there'd be a special teams. And they've got all these other ancillary awards, like, you know, the people who do the most philanthropy and the people who are the most improved and the rookies and that kind of thing. But that's one thing I would add to the NFL is just more opportunity to win MVP or be recognized as like that player who's doing the best.
So you would take off the top MVP and then you'd break it off into offense, defense, and special teams.
Because to me, once something gets to the point where you could put your finger on it, like who's going to win it, then it becomes uninteresting for everybody else. It's like, if you know 98% of the time it's going to be a quarterback, it's like, okay, well, if I don't play quarterback, I'm going to try to do my thing to get my position and my checkup, but you're not going to change the game at all. You're not going to have any parity. You're not going to have any shifting of the guard, which is very important to keep things like this in sports. If things start to get like this, it's just like in basketball. If you have a person who's like, listen, this position is the position that scores the most points, every kid is going to gravitate to that position.
Yeah.
And it's not going to leave opportunities for the others. Like, look in volleyball, how like middles are so frowned upon, you know, at a young age. Unless you're the tallest kid with athleticism, people don't gravitate towards the middle. So if you're 6'8", even though you grew later, if you're 6'8", you know, strong, can jump, it's like, hey, I know I can get opportunities in the middle because there's not a lot of other middles, and I'm going to stand out.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to be like the libero now, right? Everybody wants to be the setter. Like, oh, well, if I play that position, I'm short. You know, I could get in there. I'm not as tall, whatever the case. And in football, if every young kid wants to be the quarterback, if every young kid wants to be wide receiver, quarterback, running back, you don't get as much skill in the pass rush positions, in the lineman positions, in the other skill position, tight end.
Yeah.
And so now so many kids are playing, and that's why you have the game expanding, getting better, and because they see the check that people can make doing these things. But eventually you're going to run into an issue where everybody wants to do one thing, and that doesn't have the ability to create more jobs.
You lose, and you're losing skill in other positions that you need to have.
Exactly.
Everybody can't be QB.
Exactly. So transitioning that, MVP, if you were to pick an MVP right now, name your number 2. So I believe this is like my second choice, and this is my number 1 choice.
I still like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going Lamar Jackson and Mahomes.
Okay.
Obviously, we're going QBs, but I don't know. I've always been a fan of Lamar Jackson. Like the way he plays, like the way he moves around. He's one of the few like truly mobile quarterbacks. When I say mobile, I mean like moving better than Mike Vick. And everybody knows Mike Vick was the scariest in the league.
Yeah.
Moving better than Mike Vick, but now very good sitting in the pocket and throwing as well, which is why I'm a fan of him.
Yeah, he's improved a lot. For me, I would say Patrick Mahomes is my number 2. His stats are tough. Like right now, he's literally 6 interceptions. But when I think valuable, it doesn't take me to stats. When I think valuable, it goes towards who affects winning the most. And this guy is just like proving it. You know, it doesn't matter the scenario he gets put in. It doesn't matter how much he's up, how much he's down. Like there's an aura that's building in the league of like, don't get Mahomes. You know, it's turning into a verb. Like at the end of the game, if it's fourth quarter, you're down by 10. That ain't enough. You know, that's not enough of a gap. So he's probably the second person I'd put. And number 1 right now, I'd actually give it to Lamar Jackson as well. You know, I think I'm more of a Patrick Mahomes fan. I do believe the Chiefs have the number over the Ravens more so, but Lamar Jackson has improved so much. He's so athletic. He's like really expanded the way the game can be played, and he's opened up more opportunities for his team. Like the Ravens have a good defense, but they wouldn't be a top tier team without him.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs wouldn't be a top tier team without Patrick Mahomes. And to me, that's where like most valuable comes from. So we shall see how it goes. I'd like it to be Dak Prescott one day, but Cowboys got to get over the hump.
You got to do your work.
Yeah. Cowboys got
Dallas.
they got to get over the hump. It's tough on us being Cowboys fans to the point where every year I consider not being a Cowboys fan, but it's where I was born and raised. I got to stay tried and true.
I'll never change.
Yeah.
I'll never change.
I got to stay. But, man, they need to, like, turn the page and
figure
get
it
back
out.
to, at least get back to, like, an NFC championship.
Just win playoff game.
They're playing for real. Okay, so college football. Last year, Michigan won the title, and Harbaugh ended up shifting and transitioning to the pro game after a lot of speculation and a lot of scrutiny over the sign stealing situation. But now you've got so much media that's placed around Colorado football. You know, Deion Sanders is there. Deion Sanders' son, who's a very good quarterback, is there. Travis Hunter, who, if not the best player, one of the best players in the league. He's a Heisman candidate. Colorado has a lot of buzz, but Colorado's not even in the top 25. So Colorado's been playing well. They've been doing what they should do in terms of just moving forward and moving upward. Nobody can say that from when they took over the program that Colorado has stayed. I believe they were 1-11 before Deion Sanders took over the program.
Yeah.
And last year, although they caught fire early on and then like hit a really long skid, they had a better season than the year before. This year, they've already started better, than a season than the year before.
4-1.
So things are progressing forward. They've got a couple more recruits in there, another season under their belt with the Colorado fanship. What are your feelings on Colorado football?
I think they're just improving. I think they're a slow burn, though. We got to be patient with them. I think Hunter's for sure Heisman candidate, very good player. And I think it's still going to take them some time to get into the top 25 just because, I mean, I'm looking at their schedule here and they're not really playing anyone who's ranked other than Kansas State and Utah. Yeah. So that's the rough part. To me, I'm always looking at, okay, what is on your schedule? How many teams are in the top 25 you get to play against? And once again, this is college, so strength of schedule. So as a coach, if I can kind of get out of the division or whatever, or hopefully you're just in a strong division where you can play against a lot of top 25 teams, that's where you're going to get into the top 25 and move up into the top 25. So if they can do that, but I still think they got to really like go undefeated in order to be in a good spot.
Yeah, it's tricky because I look at this whole, longevity of the situation, and anybody who's smart, who's in Deion Sanders' position is going to say, I'm Colorado all day. I'm here, just like you've seen Nick Saban say in the past with the Dolphins, or all these other coaches in the past, who said, I'm going to be here.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, whatever the case. But you have Deion Sanders, as he should, no, I'm here, I'm in Colorado, but let's say Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter end up getting drafted. Does Colorado just go right back to bottom of the barrel, or does Colorado continue the momentum And can they start to be a team who's eventually playing in the college football playoff? Like, is all this built around, I'm Deion Sanders, I'm a high level and a high profile person and player. I want to get my son, to the top of the food chain in terms of he was playing at HBCU,
Yeah.
and now he's playing at a
D1.
Division I
Yeah.
school, and we're going to get this cachet and this notoriety. We're going to get his money up with the NIL. We're going to get him as the first number 1 pick and yada, 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 and Travis Hunter as well. Or can you see this becoming a thing that's a little bit more long-standing? Can you see Deion Sanders staying with college football? Can you see him becoming a person who stays with Colorado as opposed to jumping to one of these bigger schools? And can you see Colorado ending up being a team who's in that top 4 of college football players without Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter?
You know what I was thinking about? I would not be surprised if maybe he sat in for another year or two, because everybody knows he's about to get a ton of transfers every year that are going to be better and better. But I would not be surprised if he got that offer from Bama, like, come through, and then he goes over there and he sits in and he does his thing over there. I would not be surprised if he went to a bigger school, bigger money, maybe after his kids left or right before they go pro, and he gets to the big check and goes to the real big school.
Yeah, it's so interesting to find out. And that's actually something I like about him. He's not predictable. He's naturally a person who's not gonna turn down a bag. It's been that way since he was a player. He's not a person who's gonna turn down more cachet, more notoriety, more opportunity for the cameras to see his kids and the team he's going to play, and that should be admired. The whole goal of college sports is to be able to progress these people along as better men, which he does, through words and through actions, to try to get them more opportunities than they would have otherwise without him, which is more people to the NFL, more people with brand deals, more people with sponsorship, more people with notoriety and cameras and interview opportunities. And then finally, it's like to try to be at the highest level. Yeah. So with that, you have 2 options. You can either stick to where you are and pull that group up to the highest level, or you can go to the highest level and prove that you can stay there. So as a player, he did that, going to the NFL, joining teams like the 49ers and the Cowboys and getting to the top of the food chain, winning Super Bowls. Why would we see any different in the collegiate game?
I think it's different, though. I think it's been proven that there are college coaches and there are NFL coaches. And I think it just depends on what kind of coach he wants to be. But also, there's just more general longevity if you stay with a college team.
Yeah.
Like, there's more room to deal with not being as successful in college. In the pro game, there's like no space. Like, if you're not really playing good, they're getting you out pretty quickly. So I think it's just him making the decision, like, do I want to go to the NFL and be like, or do I want to stay in college and like have people coming to me because people love him?
Yeah, and he stated clearly that he only wants to coach a college game because of the attitudes, right? It's like dealing with a kid and helping them get along to the next level, and being in houses and recruiting is like his thing, as opposed to like dealing with grown men, who are getting paid more than the coach does and having more say a lot of times than the coach does type of situation. So I imagine he'll stay with college, but I'm super curious, like you said, if he does end up at an Alabama, a Georgia, a school like that, or if it ends up being, hey, no, we're going to take Colorado, as far as we can go type situation, or maybe there's a tertiary option in there that we're not even seeing. Yeah. So how do you foresee, things going for Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter? If you look at the current level, if you look at the pro level, being a person who's played pro sports, and knowing once you get past that, right now it is all hype, it's notoriety, it's domination, it's these things that once you get to the NFL, everybody's fast, everybody's talented, everybody's, at the highest level. And so you might still have a name because of what you did in college, but now NFL is a sport where people don't tend to transition super quickly, right? Where NBA guys come in, if they're in that top 5 of picks, they're starting right away, they're already leading scorer, top 2 scorer on their team a lot of times. NFL, you rarely see a situation like that.
No, it's rare. I'm not thinking you're gonna get a Jaden Daniels situation out of him, right? I think NFL is a slow burn, but I do think that it's good that you do everything you can as a college player to push your hype because you want to be one of the highest picks. Just because there's a higher chance you stay in the league a little bit longer, there's a higher chance that NFL teams are going to want to keep you even if you're not playing as good. They're like, you were a 2nd round pick, your 1st round pick, like, I'm gonna let you sit for 3 or 4 years and kind of improve. And I think that would be good for both of them to like push the hype, first, second round pick, and then okay, I'm gonna have to do my thing. But in the NFL, it's like it's going to be slow, and then be ready to progress and push by your third or fourth year.
Right.
So
No
I
doubt.
like that.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see this whole. I mean, a lot of people are having the back and forth of is Travis Hunter going to play both ways, the next level, how hard that would be, going against the best players
So
and that
difficult.
kind of thing.
That's so hard.
I mean, you just find though every generation there's somebody who does something that you never expected. LeBron James right now in basketball, like 22nd season, one of the best players in the league, leading the MVP of the Olympics. Like playing with his son now, which we're going to get into. But you have a situation now where at Colorado, it's all the pieces have come together. You have Deion Sanders, Cachet, all this stuff. Deion Sanders' son, potentially the number one pick or a really high pick in the NFL draft. Travis Hunter, potentially the Heisman winner. And, you have this whole swirling deal that creates all these media headlines and opportunities and buzz. So curious to see, like, how it all shakes out in terms of this season in college football, if there's, like, some popcorn moments. And then in the pros, what's it going to be like type situation. So Alabama, has had a slip up recently, losing to Vanderbilt after having a really big win against Georgia. So what does that show you? Transitioning on from Nick Saban, Alabama being probably the most storied franchise in college football at this point right now, at least within the last 15 years. Yeah. What does that show you? Going from Nick Saban and now having a new coach and having like a really big win versus Georgia, which they almost gave up. Yeah. They were up big, and then Georgia comes back and takes the lead, and then they win it on a really big play at the end of the game from their quarterback. And now you have a recent situation where they lose to a team who they're not supposed to lose to, or whatever the case. Like, what are your feelings? What are your thoughts?
It's just interesting. Like, I was thinking about the guy that I played with. I believe it's Woody Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy that I played with for volleyball, he actually went to Tennessee and was on the Tennessee team that also beat Alabama a number of years ago. And I don't even think that Tennessee team was ranked, or if they were lowly ranked.
Right.
And it's kind of that same situation where anybody can win the same way they say, like on any given Sunday or any given Saturday. Like any team can come out and win if they're hot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty bad you let Vanderbilt win, because Vanderbilt is like terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're like, 0-60 against top 25 teams or something like that, and usually gotten beaten. So it's more of just like a letdown. They probably came in after beating Georgia and they were like, we just beat Georgia, like we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And probably weren't taking practice very seriously, weren't taking game plan very seriously, and then they come in and they get beat by Vanderbilt, which is highly embarrassing, because I don't even know where they're ranked. They got to be probably under top 50, under top 75 teams in the country. And so coming through with that, I'm like, you guys got to hold who you are. You guys got to hold the standard. But if Nick Saban's not there, then you most likely can't do that.
Yeah, to me it's and again, I have no idea how Kalen DeBoer coaches, and I'm not gonna act like I do. What I'm gonna speak about is like separately from that situation. What I see a lot is just an underestimation and an underappreciation of like how important coaching is, in general. I see that in sports. So often we're in this era where we talk about the players, the teams, whatever the case, and like if you look in history, the success of most teams and most players is predicated on the coach. If you look at Michael Jordan in basketball, Michael Jordan wasn't winning anything until Phil Jackson got there. If you look at, and same thing for Kobe Bryant. Yeah, same thing for Kobe Bryant. If you look at NFL, Tom Brady, like Bill Belichick was right there during that whole process, minus like the one in Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. It's like there was a consistent coach. It wasn't like I'm winning with all these different coaches. And LeBron James, although he started off his career losing a lot of the finals that he went to when he went to 10 straight finals, he had a lot of different coaches and a lot of different turbulence. But if you look at any situation where it's consistent with the coach, or you have like a really highly touted coach, usually the progress is following that. So Alabama's success, Nick Saban was rock solid there the whole time, and
you got Popovich with the Spurs.
Yeah, I mean all these examples you can go to, and in every sport too. But if you look at the Nick Saban-led teams, the reason that there wasn't a lot of losing to unranked teams, except like you mentioned, there's a Tennessee, there's a slip up here and there all the time, but you do have this energy from the highest level coaches that they keep you on this like track, even when like the team's going to steer away a little bit, or the team's going to be youthful, or the team's going to shift their focus. The coach can like pull that team back to the track. It's not to say this new coach can't. It's his first year. They're a couple games in. They lost by 3 points, but that ability as a coach is the number one ability to be able to keep a job long term, to be storied, to be remembered, to be historic, is the ability to be able to keep a team on the track for as long as possible and get them to the ultimate goal. It's probably one of the hardest things to do as a coach too, especially in today's era because of social media.
I couldn't imagine doing it once again with a football team. You got the biggest team besides like a track team, like 100 or 80 people. You're like, we must be able to keep that same deal, and we must be able to keep that same standard, which is super hard because everybody wants to do their own thing. It takes a specific coach who knows what they're doing in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, you and I can look at our pro season and even like look at the season we played together internationally, and we had a team of 12 people, right? And there's even turbulence in that situation at times. Like being able to keep 12 people on the same page, being able to keep 4 people on the same page, like throughout a season, that we can like literally look at the season we played together and go, there were matches lost because of a lack of the coach being able to keep stuff steered with the whole group, you know, in a straight line, and being able to gain understanding and camaraderie and, you know, team unity type situation. So to have a team that has 80 plus people on it, plus a staff, plus the outside world looking in on it, plus all these things, like there's a lot of variables to it. So it's impressive, you know, when a coach does have the ability to do that.
That's rough.
It's impressive. So transitioning into the NBA, history was just made in terms of LeBron James and his son being on the court at the same time. If you would have said 20 years ago, LeBron James is going to end up becoming the league's best player, he's going to hold that title for more than a decade, pushing on 2 decades, and that's going to transition to him winning championships, winning Olympic gold, being a primary player, being the face of the league, being a philanthropist, having no really skid marks on his career or like run-ins with the law, and then capping it all off towards the end of his career, being able to have his son not only in the NBA and not only like heading towards the NBA, but on an NBA team that is his team, and then making his way onto the court. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
Only thing I could think of was face of the league. Because when he came in, I was already a fan of him. I was like, he's for sure going to be the face of the league. He came in and everybody was like, he's the real deal when he stepped in at 18. But the longevity piece, so rare. You know, most NBA players, by the time 34, 35, is like, there's no way. And he's still in the league, and then you're going to have kids now. You got Bronny, you got Bryce, and you got Bronny coming into the league. They get to play together. Like, that's so rare. I think they said that's the first time this ever happened in the NBA. But I think it's happened 3 or 4 other times in other major sports, MLB, I think maybe NFL and something like that. But it's just so rare, and it's super unexpected. I'm just excited to see like how good Bronny can get, because everyone's just been on him. They're like, oh man, like his stats aren't good. And I'm like, you know how hard it is to be LeBron's son? So like one of the best player ever son, you come into the NBA and you still have so many things to learn and work on. But even just watching Bronny's game, I'm like, you're for sure LeBron's son. Like, he can do every single skill. He's just trying to figure out which skills he's going to be elite at. And it looks like he's already good defensively. And so he just needs to build on that.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like you said, he's LeBron's son. The IQ is there. The thing you see watching him from the past and the present is he tends to sit back and let the game come to him. He's not one of these players. Like Carmelo Anthony's son is very aggressive towards taking the game. He's like, I'm coming right in your front door and I'm going to score 40 tonight. And you see a lot of players who are like that. You know, they're above the rim, they're behind the three-point line, they're ball handling consistently. He's a player who definitely tends to let the game come to him a little bit more. But I'm not one of these people who like doesn't believe he belongs in the NBA or wouldn't be in the NBA if LeBron wasn't his dad. Like, he's got a 40-inch vertical. He's athletic. In high school, he did great work. In college, his situation was super rare. You can look at the stats and go, he averaged 3 to 5 points, and the man was in cardiac arrest and didn't play for like 4 months. Joined back mid-season, early to mid-season, and never caught stride. And so he did great at the combines, which the combines are there to test how do you go in these pressure situations. You get one combine, like you get one day. He shot the best. He jumped out the gym. He's athletic. He's the son of the second best player, in my opinion, of all time. And you have this scenario where if somebody's raised by like a really great coach, you know, they always go, hey, that's a Duke guy. They play with Coach K. We're going to like him. But like you have the smartest player in the league right now and the second best player of all time in your household on a daily basis, and you don't think there's value in having that? Like, and none of his habits show that he's a silver spoon kid. None of his habits show like, oh, he just expects, whatever comes to him. He's on the camera talking crazy. Like, he's head down, hard work, doesn't say a word, but like competes hard. Like, I really like that about him. And so is it tough for the Lakers because it creates more media around the wrong things? Sure.
Probably.
Like, it doesn't create great media around, hey, we're going for a championship. It's like people call it a circus. People say, oh, LeBron's just changing the narrative and creating stuff. But what person out there in the world who has the power to get their son on their pro team wouldn't exercise that power?
Everybody would.
Name me one person in the world who had that power who wouldn't exercise that power.
And the funny part is, like, everybody ridiculed him for that. And I'm like, but in every other aspect of life, that happens on a regular basis. If you own a business, if you're a part of a business, if you're a CEO, your son always comes in as the intern. Your son always comes in and becomes like the next man up. And it's like, wait a minute, well, he can't do that. I'm like, he can't do it because he's in the NBA?
Exactly.
I was like, because last time I checked, any other life situation, your son is coming in with you if you're at a high place.
100%. He's setting a precedent. Like, early on, LeBron James is an impressive player, but his ability to be able to shift the market and make things happen for other people is what's been impressive to me. It's similar to the Caitlin Clark situation. We were talking about before how Caitlin Clark came into the league. There's a lot of hate towards her and a lot of, like, jealousy is the word of, well, we were already popping before she got here. We were already on the uptrend before she got here. Like, why can't you just be appreciative? Like, we have more fans because of her. There's more viewership because of her. There's more eyes because of her. That's going to get me shine too. That's going to get me money too. That's going to get me opportunity too. If there are other people out there who are sports trainers, you and I have chosen to be sports trainers as one of our jobs. If there's other people out there sports training, that only brings more cachet and more ability and more people getting interested. Like,
exactly.
If you try to monopolize the market, that's less opportunity. So LeBron James comes in, hey, I'm going to make sure players get like brand deals the way Jordan set the market. Other people get deals off that. Anthony Edwards gets deals off that. Jason Tatum gets deals off that. If LeBron James comes in and says, hey, I want players to have more say in where they can go and being able to shift teams. Other people get benefit off that. So the people in the league aren't hating on LeBron. Like, you don't see players popping out, talking out the side of their mouth.
Not at all.
But it's the media and the people outside of the media and a lot of fans, who... Right now, there's so many Laker fans who dislike that LeBron James is a Laker guy. And they're like, bring back Kobe. LeBron's making this a circus. LeBron's making this a clown show. It's like, whether you want to put an asterisk on it or not, he did win a championship with the Lakers. Like, I don't care if it's in the bubble or where it is. Winning, out of all the teams being in the league, is hard.
Winning is winning.
Winning's hard. So, won a championship with your franchise is bringing so much money into your franchise by being there. Like, you don't want to run a situation where you're not being appreciative, and then when he's gone, you're bummed. So
I think his son ended up like having a crazy amount of jersey sales already.
Insane.
Like, they're already
you already know what it's going to be like. My big curiosity is he going to get on the court in these legit games? Like, he made it on the court these preseason games, all great moment, ha ha ha. But when it comes like real time, everybody was talking like, well, everybody was so sure, hey, he's going to have to be in the G League. Like, they're not going to play him. It's going to take a year. I'm curious if he's going to make it in the rotation.
Yeah, I think he might, but I don't see him having a ton of time. I think that other rookie's going to play more.
Yeah, he's nice.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. So I think that he'll have a place in the rotation. I just don't think it'll be high minutes. Maybe it'll be a 5 to 10 minute window or something like that.
I'm so curious. Like, is it going to be a regular thing to see, like, LeBron James Jr., like, on the court?
If he shows, like, being elite defensively, which he kind of showed in preseason, I think there will be a place for him. It's just, like, where exactly is that going to fit?
You just got to be able to hit that corner three. That's so. If you can play defense and hit that corner three, there's a spot for you in the NBA.
Yeah.
3 and D.
3
There's
and
a
D
reason
players,
it's called that. Like, if you can hit that corner three, like, he just got to get comfortable. He could shoot, but it's just so much. It's rhythm and it's mental. It's like in any sport. There's a lot of guys who can set the ball at a high level, but can you get in and like run offense and feel flow when you're playing against really like high maintenance players? If you're in the NFL, there's a lot of guys who can catch the ball. Can you catch it when it's like the third quarter? You get one ball, like you're running that deep ball and it hits you in the hands. Like, that's the question. It's like, can he knock down these threes and can he get comfortable enough to be like, I'm just like everybody else out here. hit me in the corner.
On
you know, and
few
I'm gonna pop it.
opportunities, that's the rough part because you don't have time to get in rhythm. You're
Yeah.
not a JJ Redick.
Right.
You're not a Ray Allen.
Right.
Where you're getting
Plays
10
run for
threes.
you.
Yeah, you're getting 10 threes a game where you got time to work in the rhythm. Can you get 4 shots up and hit 2 of them? Right. So I think that's going to be it. But if he proves that he can get some steals and he can get those sleeper blocks, there's going to be room for him to get into the lineup.
For sure. And so what else in the NBA? Teams to watch. Who are you liking right now? The NBA season's getting closer. We're in October.
I'm still my team, Lakers, Mavericks.
Yeah.
I'm still T-Wolves. I don't know. I don't have another team right now, but those 3.
It's so interesting that Karl Anthony Towns is on the Knicks. I'm so curious to see how that's going to shake out.
It's weird to see him in that jersey.
Yeah, it is. I'm a big fan right now of the Timberwolves. Like Anthony Edwards is just I'm liking him more and more and more. Like his charisma, his cachet. I think he's the person who will definitely take over the face of the league in the next couple of years here. I know John Morant's gonna have something to say about that. Wemby's gonna have something to say about that. Luka Doncic's gonna have something to say about that. But it's just he's got so much cachet, like, and coming off the Olympic team, gold medal, like, got on the court, got burned. He did so much good work in the playoffs last year until they ran into Dallas. Like, I mean, he took over against the Suns. He did great work against Denver, and I want to see like how it's going to go in terms of the season. But there's going to be a lot of interesting teams. I mean, the depth of the NBA is getting so impressive. How many good players there are. The Celtics, like people don't talk about them enough. They're the defending champions, and they're returning like almost their whole squad.
The whole team.
You've got the Lakers going to be interesting. LeBron James and Anthony Davis had a great summer, playing with Team USA. They may not have the shooters everybody wants to have around them, but all it takes is 1 or 2 guys stepping up, playing at a high level. And other teams, I mean, you got the Spurs who didn't even sniff the playoffs. Now they've got Chris Paul, makes them a little more interesting. You've got the Denver Nuggets, they added Russell Westbrook, who typically hasn't done well for teams in terms of them having deep playoff runs.
Yeah.
But now you have one of the better teams, type situation with the Denver Nuggets and Jokic, who's a 3-time MVP.
Jokic,
so
unstoppable.
I mean, people aren't talking right now about Giannis and that team too much, who just won a championship a couple years ago. And even the Spurs, the Suns, they're returning that team who's got 3 of, some of the league's best players all on the same team. So 2 of those guys are on the Olympic team. So it's going to be an interesting season. I'm curious to see how it shakes out. I'm very excited. But looking at the NBA, MVP, just like we did for NFL, who would you see in the MVP race for the NBA?
Jokic. Like, there's not really...
Fourth MVP in a row?
Well, if you look at him, it's like... It's weird because he's like 6'10", but he plays like he's 7'5", you know? Like, you're looking and you're like, there's nobody like him ever in the league. The best, I think he's considered like the best big man. As far as like his abilities outside of like scoring, right? He's also a very good rebounder, ridiculously good passer. He's a better passer than most guards in the NBA. So it's like a guy who's a big, who's like a potential triple-double every night. I'm like, I can't think of too many players that are going to be like, oh, yeah, I could do something like that other than like a LeBron James type. But there's nobody like Jokic.
Yeah, Jokic is impressive. Last year, Joel Embiid was leading the race until he got injured. And availability is a really big thing. The best ability is availability. So I'm curious to see if it ends up being guard or big. That's the biggest question I have. There's too many players right now, and the season hasn't even started to name them. You can preface and say, let's take a look at Anthony Edwards if he goes on a tear. Let's take a look at going back to LeBron James if he really decides to like go to a new level. Let's look at like a Steph Curry if he can even get his team in the playoffs. Let's look at a Jokic, and then you have the Celtics side. You have Jason Tatum, you have Jaylen Brown, you have Giannis, you have New York Knicks. There's so many players who could end up being in that conversation. But for me, it's a big question of will it be a guard or will it be a big? The biggest thing about Jokic that's been impressive, although they run the offense through him, from that kind of free throw line area, is to be a big who's an MVP in today's NBA, where you're not ball dominant usually and you're not having as much touch on the ball, is crazy. We've shifted over to a space where point guards are a lot of times the leading scorers for teams, and to be able to do it from that standpoint, as I'm seeing, I would like to see a different MVP just because he's won 2 or 3 in a row at this point. And that's not hating to say he can't win it again. If he earns it, he earns it. But I would like to see a little bit of parity. And I'd honestly like to see it, like I said, with in the NFL, is like I'd like to see it open up. There's so many good players now. So there's tons of awards, Defensive Player of the Year. You have the MVP. You have the
Most
Rookie of the Year,
Improved.
Most Improved, Sixth Man of the Year, all this stuff. But I would like to see there be a little bit of differentiation for people doing the different skills, like maybe Guard of the Year, Big Man of the Year, Wing of the Year, whatever the case.
Open it up a little bit more.
Because we're also in a time where everybody does everything, it's challenging. So I get why that is. All right, so shifting into our primary sport, volleyball. Talking about women's college volleyball right now. We want to bring more awareness to what's happening in the world of volleyball. Volleyball is the #1 growing sport in terms of beach volleyball right now in the NCAA. It's doing nothing but growing from a professional standpoint as well as a college standpoint for the indoor, especially on the women's side. And so volleyball, it doesn't only pay benefit to us, becoming bigger and bigger, but also benefit to the rest of the world, seeing the excitement behind it, seeing how big of a sport it is, and seeing how well it's liked once people get their butts in the seats. And volleyball's got to get on TV more often for sure. And it has been. College volleyball I'm seeing more frequently on ESPN. I'm seeing more frequently, but it's got to continue to build from the pro to the college to the youth. So with college volleyball right now, for those who don't know, Pitt is undefeated. And they are absolutely going on a tear right now. Where I have connections to Pitt, there's a young lady who I train named Ayanna Watson who's committed to Pitt. And they've been to the last couple Final Fours. There's a girl right now who's from local who went to Marymount High School named Tori Stafford who's starting at Pitt. They've got a girl named Olivia Babcock who was the opposite for a girl who I was coaching last year on her club team. And just watching these girls, I watched them a lot in high school and club, make that transition to now being the big dogs, as it pertains to college is really impressive. It's really cool to see. Their head coach was actually at Hawaii when I first went to school there before leaving to get over to the women's game. And so a lot of personal connections, a lot of deep roots in the volleyball world tends to be small in some ways. Everybody knows everybody. But what are your feelings right now on college volleyball? What's happening with Pitt? What's happening in the sport in general?
I think it's just growing. I think everybody's kind of starting to see it. I think from the Olympics, I think to trying to create the program now, the college game, I think it's just getting bigger and bigger. And once again, I said before, we just got to put it on the long track. We got to think of growing volleyball as like the MLS, like growing it out. Like they used to have the Galaxy, they add the Galaxy, and then they add LAFC. We got 2 soccer teams in Los Angeles now. And I think we got to kind of have that same slow burn with volleyball as well. But I think everybody's starting to see it. And I think they keep adding more rules to make the game faster. So shortening the points and taking away some of the netting calls that they were making before and taking away the doubling that they were calling. And I think those things make it faster and make it more entertaining. But nobody really knows about how volleyball is until you sit in on a college match, until you sit in on a pro match. And we get that all the time. You talk to the parents, and the parents are like, yeah, like I've seen it. Or other people are like, yeah, I've seen it on TV. But it's like, and then they get in the real game, and they're like, this is fast. They realize how fast it is, how fast people are moving, how fast the ball is moving, and they're like, oh, okay, this is super entertaining. Like I see why people are spending so much time watching. And I mean, even Pitt's got everybody's athletic. It's crazy. They remind me very much of like kind of those Texas teams where everybody's big and athletic, and I believe it's Babcock the opposite, right? I just was watching, like I was on my Instagram, I was like, who is this person just like stuffing people and literally just like housing people, like regularly, and making it look easy. And that's hard to stop, especially if you got big opposite versus outside hitter. And outside hitter is the main position, especially in women's volleyball, and just like blocking people off the court. And she's doing it out of the back row.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive what they're doing. And Pitt seems to have recruiting classes who are coming up who you're not going to see much change in that. You know, like they've done a really great job building a culture over there. But like you said, in volleyball right now, the speed of it, the strength of it, the athleticism, people really like to see that once they see it in person. It just hasn't been one of the primary big sports in pro, and everything's a trickle down in America, right? If NFL, MLB, and NBA hold the keys, everything's going to trickle down from there. But as tennis has become more popular, golf has become more popular, gymnastics has become more popular, there's a trickle down. And so volleyball is right up here on deck to be able to get more viewership, more fans, and more opportunities. So the indoor game it brings more opportunities.
Yeah.
It's more players. It's more of a team. It's
Yeah.
bigger. You know, it's like old school. It's school versus school, competition versus competition. So a lot of people wonder, you know, why is the beach game not growing as well? Because people have attachments to their cities. People have attachments to their states.
Yeah.
People have attachments to large groups. So we get that from things like we've talked about, NFL. Oh, I'm a Chicago Bears fan.
Yeah.
Somebody might not even know 3 players' names in the Chicago Bears, but they know they're Chicago Bears fan.
Yeah.
Like you and I, we're Dallas Cowboys
Yeah.
fans. We probably couldn't name more than 7 people on the roster right now, but you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. So beach volleyball gets tricky because you have to know the individuals, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to know the name, Phil Dahlhauser, Todd Rogers.
Yeah.
You have to know Karch Karai and Ken Steffes.
Yeah.
You have to know Misty May and Carrie Walsh.
Yeah.
Or April Ross and whoever it happens to be. But right now, you have a situation where they're trying in beach volleyball to get this team thing going, and the AVP is trying to get like, oh, we have cities, which is smart.
Yeah.
That's the concept that works in other sports. So the same thing with this pro volleyball league. They're starting to get, okay, this city's got this team, the Vegas Thrill, the San Diego this, the Texas that.
Yeah.
If you have that, you give yourself the best opportunity to grow because the state will come represent. They'll say, hey, oh, this is our Texas team? Yeah, we'll lock in with you guys. Oh, it's San Diego team, we'll lock in with you guys, as opposed to needing to know one individual. And all it takes is one individual to get hurt or get injured or retire or play badly to lose the interest in that.
Yeah, you lose
Versus
everything.
if you have a state or a city that you can go with, it's like, hey, we're repping no matter what. And why indoor volleyball continues to kill it is because, yes, there's college, which already has all these teams and organizations and people love their school.
Yeah.
Oh, I went to Stanford. Stanford volleyball is killing it. Oh, I went to Pitt. I hear Pitt volleyball is killing it. I could
Yeah.
represent. I could wear a shirt type of situation.
Sit in on it.
But volleyball continuing to build, this is the way. Like what's happening right now. It's got to get on TV. That's the primary thing. People are not just going to always go out to matches. They have to be able to digest it from their phones, from their TVs, from their tablets. And then there has to be players who people know and recognize. And that's the thing that really hasn't been built yet in college volleyball. Volleyball players know volleyball players, but you couldn't ask a random Joe Schmo on the street, like, who are the top 2 college volleyball players right now?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't know, you know?
And also, I mean, it's finally kicked off with social media, but you still can't name too many volleyball players who have over 100,000 followers on Instagram.
Right.
And you can name a ton of other players in pro sports who have like 1 million.
Right.
So it's like the social media game really has to come up. And I think it's been coming up. There's more social media managers at schools now. There's more people taking video and taking pictures to where they can post. Similar to kind of like the Long Beach State thing where the men's squad is like, they got video for everything now. And so I think it just needs to grow where you're seeing more athletes that are getting to that higher follower count because then other people start to see it and they want to get involved.
For sure, for sure. And everything's trickle down, like we said. It's pro. When people get that, oh, the pros are doing it, they're jumping, they're running, they're moving. Yeah, I want to do that. How do I get there? Oh, I got to play college?
Yeah.
Okay, how do I start to like set my thing to go into college? Parents ingrained it in their head, kids ingrained it in their head, programs ingrained in their head. Hey, we're trying to get these kids to the next level.
Yeah.
And then like from there, it trickles back to the clubs. And that's where volleyball right now, and transparency is at a little bit of a standstill. The training level in clubs, the seriousness in clubs, like the push to make sure athletes understand the education of how to become a pro is not there. So there's only a couple places where you're like, hey, we have kids who've gone to play pro. Here's who they are. Here's how you get in touch. Here's how you watch them. Here's how you learn their path. That's not really a thing because people kind of poo-poo volleyball in the club space. Like we poo-poo our own sport a lot of time. There's not a lot of clubs where you're going and people are like, you could become a pro. You could get paid to do this.
Yeah.
If you do A, B, C,
Yeah.
and that's like some of the education you and I have to start to bring. As people who have played pro, we've learned how to be able to have a lifestyle based around the sport. We've learned how to help athletes get to that level. A lot of it is responsibility falling on us to push that narrative of, you know, you can become a pro. I was talking to a boy yesterday who literally plays on the number 1 17 team in the country. Like, he's got the number 1 outside hitter in the country on his team, and he's a year down. He's got the number 1 opposite. He's the backup setter. And I'm saying to him, like, hey, you could go play at this level. He's like, no, I'm too short. No, I'm not going to be able to. And I'm like, you're
What?
talking to a person who does this all day. Like, I
Yeah.
know what it looks like, you
Yeah.
know. But that confidence to be able to go, oh, yeah, this is what I'm pursuing. This is
Yeah.
what I'm going for. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like, and he's in the best area to do it.
Yeah.
Like, imagine the people elsewhere in the country who aren't in the best area, girls and boys.
Yeah, you're not in the right spot.
So having the confidence and having the push and having the understanding of how do I actually make this happen, that's the education that not only needs to come out, it has to get pushed. Because there's some people out there who have it,
Yeah.
and there are some people out there who are giving it out. You know, there's some great pages out there to follow. But ultimately, the biggest thing is it's got to be a whole plethora of people who believe it and push it.
I just don't think that there's enough people who know.
Exactly.
Right? There's not a lot of people who know, like, how to go and get recruited and how to get into college and how the entire process is set up.
Right.
Like, they have no clue. Like, I talked to a ton of, they're like, I don't know how I'm going to go to college and play. And I'm like, this is how it's done.
Right.
Right? And I just don't think that there's information about that. But, or then there's the other side where everybody thinks they're going to go D1.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. Like, please take that out of your head. Like, I think there's like maybe a less than 5% chance that you're going to go D1 out of high school.
Right.
So I think it's just understanding that you can get an opportunity, but you need to take the opportunity that's given to you, whether that's D2, whether that's D3, whether that's NAIA, whether that's community college. Like, go and take whatever opportunity you get and make sure that you push and you maximize that opportunity so you can do more. And once again, like, we're proving you can come out of community college and go play pro, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it may be rare, but if you put in the work, you can get an opportunity.
For sure, 100%. So I like that part that you said about, basically getting in where you fit in. It's like too many people decide on D1, like you said, and to them there's that glass ceiling, and once they hit it, it's done. Like, as opposed to me, I was coming out like, yeah, I'm gonna play D1, I'm turning down these other offers, and I went to my D1 and I got cut. And fortunately, an opportunity came up, and that's where you and I met.
Yeah.
That first day I came, at Long Beach City College, and then everything just ramped up from there. But again, we had the fortune of having some people who were willing to show us the ropes. We had to figure out a lot of it on our own. Getting out to the beach, doing extra reps, extra open gyms. We were running all over the map, everywhere, doing our thing. But we also had the Randy Tutorps, the Trevor Johnsons. We had our college coaches, for you, the Shawns, and who's your other college coach?
I had Ryan McGuire.
Yeah, Ryan, and then for me, like Sproul and Niffin, and progressing that on, to our pro opportunities. So you have to be willing to take in the information. The people now, they have the best opportunity because social media has it all for them. The internet and social media has all the information. You just have to be willing to hunt it down. You just have to be willing to hunt it down. Like, social media was not popping like this when you and I were coming up. Like, it was not popping like this.
I wish. And on top of that, athletes, like, if they're just able to get any type of video and just, like, put it on social media, put it on YouTube.
And that's the thing.
Like, you can get recruited like that.
That's
it's
the thing.
so easy.
I get these kids who, like, their parents will, like, try to take your video, which I'd like to see kids take more ownership of it, get themselves a tripod, set it up, learn how to maneuver it. But they'll have their parents, taking video, and the kids will be like, stop videoing me. And I like snap at them. Like, you don't understand the value.
Yeah.
You don't understand the value that person is about to give you, and you're like poo-pooing it.
Yeah, you need a video.
Yeah, like, there's nothing like the ability to be able to do it, from home. People now can, like, build complete brands or whatever the case. But nonetheless, then there's nothing like attaching yourself to a situation where it's already known, because that's also the issue. Is people right now try to do it DIY everything.
Yeah.
And whether they're a person in business, they're a person in sports, if they're a person in, like, the youth sector or the adult sector, because everybody thinks they can do it on their own, and they wonder why, like, they can't get the steam, they can't get it flowing, they can't get it rolling. It's like, you have to be with somebody who already understands how to do it, or you have to be with somebody who understands how you guys are going to do it together, type of situation. So that's the situation with volleyball. Rankings right now, it's interesting. Again, continuing to educate. Let's take a look at where we are volleyball rankings right now. Pitt is number 1, unanimous. You got Nebraska number 2, Penn State, Louisville, Stanford, Creighton, Texas, Kansas, Wisconsin, Purdue, Oregon, Kentucky, Arizona State, Minnesota, and SMU. That rounds out the top 15, followed by USC, TCU, Baylor, Florida, Georgia Tech, finishing out that top 20. So women's volleyball, there's a big race right now to try to get the number 1 spot. Obviously, Pitt's holding it down. Some of the blue blood schools, we see there, Texas, Stanford, schools like that, they're in the mix. But
Nebraska, Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. Nebraska, Wisconsin, they're in the mix. But
Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State's number
I think it's
3 right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Penn State.
So it's going to be interesting how it all shakes out. But college volleyball, who do you got in the Final Four, if you had to say?
I got my usuals. Wisconsin and Nebraska, they're always in the mix. They're huge. Obviously, Pitt will be in there, but I'm always interested to see what Penn State's going to do, because Penn State had the coaching turnover a few years. Russ Rose left, and it's nice to see them like back up because everybody remembers how good Penn State was. And Russ Rose
back when they had the Megan Hodges of the world, Alicia Glass, and like they were doing it.
They were crazy.
They were doing it. Them rivalries with Stanford and Penn State, like they were doing it. Texas.
They were untouchable.
Yeah. So my Final Four, I'm gonna go with Pitt. I'm gonna go with Nebraska. I'm gonna go with Stanford sneaking in there, Cammie Minor.
Dude, they got Tim Duncan's daughter on the team, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's hard to go against Texas. It's hard to go against Texas.
Big Tex.
All right, I got Pitt, Nebraska, Penn State, Stanford. That's what I'm going with.
Okay.
I don't even know if that can work out based on like the brackets and how the leagues work, but that's what I'm going with.
I'm with it.
So we'll find out. All right, transitioning into business. So this is a piece that in episode 2, we're going to start to talk about a little bit. We want people to know this is not just about sports, business, relationships, sports. This is the title of the podcast. We're going to hit those things, from a consistent standpoint. But let's jump right into real estate. So real estate market right now is interesting around the country, to say the least. You've had all these ebbs and flows, really since 2008 when the market dipped last, and recently COVID. Had a situation where people were renting crazy and like going out and just trying to get outside of the house, and then things settled down and the market blew up around the country where prices were at highs that people have never seen them, and inflation has happened, and now things are settling out a little bit and interest rates are still really high. Well, they seem to be ticking down. So what's worth mentioning in real estate right now on your end?
To me, just looking at what's happening in Florida, and then what's happening with the insurers. So home insurers are starting to pull out here. They're pulling out of Florida, trying to pull out of here in California. We're in California right now. They're trying to pull out just because everything is so expensive. I think with Florida, they have so many natural disaster problems. And then I'm seeing prices drop. Prices are starting to drop in Florida. People have been having their houses on sale for a long time. And the issue is, I think it's the supply situation. It's like a ton of people are in their houses and they got the low rate. They got the 2% interest rate. And then there are people who want to buy, but they're like, I'm not trying to buy at like 6 or 7%. And the funny part is, like, it's a 5% difference, but nobody understands like how big that is. They were saying like the difference in between the mortgage would be like $2,000 for a mortgage on 2%, and maybe like $3,700 if you were at like 6 or 7%. So who would want to sell their house they had on a 2% and then jump in and their mortgage has skyrocketed almost double?
Exactly. It's making people having to sit right now. So you brought up the perfect examples. In Florida right now, people who do flood insurance, people who do wind insurance, like they're trying to pull out because like it's happening. Like insurance companies are having to pay, or they're like, look, we're out of money type situation, and it's creating lawsuits. So people in Florida, it's harder and harder to get insurance. And with that, like also with the housing, people who are consumers, like they're learning, hey, if I want to live in Florida, there may be some benefits, no state income tax, I get the sunshine weather, I get this and that, but the natural disasters are gnarly. Like situations are just pressing up. Yeah. I mean, Milton just passing through right now. Tampa hasn't been hit in 100 years with a direct hit, and they're getting hit. Like the roof tore off the baseball stadium. Like the roof tore off the baseball stadium.
That's crazy.
So people are seeing this stuff on the news, and like anything, it makes people pull back. We're in an election year, it makes people pull back. People hesitate, people wait. So California, there's always been the nervousness around the earthquakes and everything, but California's legislation, California's government, California is just pressing with the real estate now situation too, because earthquakes are prevalent, and also just home prices went crazy. Like
I think they almost doubled.
Yeah, like there's people who bought their house for, let's say in California, it's hard to find a place under $1 million in California, in most parts of California, but house prices, there's people who bought their homes at $250,000, $300,000, and now are worth like 1.3, 1.4 million. Like in a couple years, not over 20 years, in a couple years, like finger snap.
So that's the biggest growth.
So people see that, right, and they go, ooh, interesting, I want to get in the real estate market. But then they understand, to get in the real estate market, I have to purchase that? I don't get to come in at 25. Oh, shoot, never mind. Let me continue to do what I was doing. I'm renting before. But rent is really tricky right now in places like California and Florida because of the rates. Like, so for you to find a scenario in the United States where you're getting all the things that you want is tricky. People want sunshine. They don't want cold weather a lot of times. People want the ability to have the LA lifestyle, the Miami lifestyle, the New York lifestyle. But these are the most tricky places to be. So you really get put in a situation where you're doing one of two things. You're either taking a big risk from jump and going, I'm going to get myself into a really uncomfortable mortgage or a really uncomfortable loan situation that I'm not sure how it's going to shake out with weird terms and weird arms on it.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to like wade in the water and I'm going to keep myself away from, potentially bigger opportunities and I'm just going to kind of play it safe and wait. And knowing waiting, all it's going to do is raise the prices and raise the inflation. Things are not going to go down. Things are not going to go down from here. So anybody who's interested in real estate, like my recommendation is you find yourself a smaller place that's affordable. Don't go crazy and try to get the dream house from jump. Like, well, I want to live next to the ocean in a 4-bedroom and I want to have an overlook of the ocean.
Do it.
Like, scale that back. Like, I'm going to be inland. I'm going to get a little 1 or 2 bedroom place that's manageable mortgage that makes sense, something I know I can do. And if and when you can get it paid off, then just start to compound it. But people are getting themselves into really crazy, uncomfortable debt situations, like trying to chase the dream. But then also, you have a lot of people who are just playing it safe, waiting for the time to come, knowing the time is never going to come if you don't take action. So
it's a weird balance because I'm just looking around and I'm like, so you might be getting into something more expensive. I think the biggest problem is just people even getting a down payment.
Right.
Like you talking about getting a 20% down payment on $1 million house,
yep.
$200K, you're gonna put that down. They said people were like living with friends and living with family and stuff just so they can stack the bread on the down payment. And then the interesting part is after they stack the bread on the down payment, there's no emergency fund on top of that. And people forget that on rent, you're capped at what you're gonna pay. On mortgage, you pay more.
Yep.
So now it's like it's maintenance and it's utilities. And so people are getting killed. They're like, oh, I forgot to have money for my closing costs and the repairs that I needed and furnishing the house. And it's like, no. Like the down payment is just the down. You need way more money. And then in that situation, like everybody's kind of stagnant, which is then what's making the rent prices go up. But then also because of COVID, the rent prices went up. Everybody's forgetting about the rent moratorium that lasted for 2 or 3 years where nobody had to pay rent.
Right.
And so you're talking about landlords that are like, wait a minute, I'm not getting any money, you get to live here?
Right.
And they're like, okay, as soon as that comes off, you're getting out and I'm going to run the rent way up because I haven't been getting paid for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So it's a lot of weird things that are happening that's creating questions financially and how much people are going to pay. And I feel bad because sometimes people are paying like 40 to 50% of their income on rent.
100%. So you, in the situation that you just explained it out really well. Me, I got my real estate license earlier in 2024, and the whole time, I was going through the process of learning what I already knew and then learning what I didn't know yet, and getting educated on these pieces around the country of like what's really happening within the real estate market. Is a whole lot of people are putting themselves in a situation where they're moving out of fear. Okay, like you said, with the down payment, all right, I'm going to save it for a down payment, and they're figuring out the information too late that you better double your down payment. If you really want to live comfortably, get your down payment, double your down payment so you have, like you said, emergency funds, so you have money ready. So on top of the emergency fund, money for things that are guaranteed to happen, like you're going to have some fixes for utilities. Like that's not an emergency, that's like, it's coming, so be ready. And then you have the situation where rent might shift. You still have to live the rest of your life. You still have to be able to, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, like you have to be able to afford your groceries, your lifestyle, making sure the things that you want in your house are in your house, unless you just want to be living in a box type situation. And then on top of this, people don't want to work a lot of times. So people want to work less, play more, still be able to have the house they want and the lifestyle they want. Why? Because social media is telling them they can do this.
Compounding.
A lot of times people are looking at the people on social media who are going, all you need to do is sign yourself up for one of these $100,000 credit cards, extract the credit, take that $100,000, buy a house, get a down payment on the house, and then repeat that process for the next 100 houses you get. It's like you're gonna have people underneath the jail.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have people underneath the jail playing this game. Like don't play with the IRS, don't play with the state of California, don't play with like any of these other states. You're gonna have people underneath the jail doing this situation. So you need to make sure when you're going into this process, not only do you have like plan A as it pertains to the financial piece, but you also have to have, like you said, the emergency fund is legitimate. The money that you're going to be using to pay the increases in your insurance, in your property taxes, in your utilities, in the things that go wrong with the house needs to be there.
And some big stuff that go wrong in the house. Talking about an HVAC, your AC system,
100%.
heating system.
That might be
I
10
think
to
that's at least
15K.
Yeah.
You
and
might
then
have
the
a
roof.
situation where the friggin' water pipe bursts and the whole wall is out. That's 10K. Roof's got to get fixed. That's 10K. Like, easy, because price of materials are up, price of labor is up. Like, the expedited process is not happening anymore. So everything has to happen, in due time. So what does all this point towards? Making sure that if you're going to go into real estate, you have solidarity on the other sides of your life. Like, you have to have solidarity in your job. You have to have solidarity in your habits and your lifestyle. And more than anything, you have to make sure everything you're doing within your lifestyle is stuff you can afford.
Yeah.
But people are doing too much. Like, you're trying to go out to dinner every night. You're trying to go to Top Golf. You're trying to do all this extra stuff. And then you also want to have the mortgage. Like, you got to make sure your order of operations is on point.
I don't think, and I think from what you were saying, like, everybody wants to do everything, which is a big thing that I talk about. Like, you want to have either the really expensive apartment or you want to have the house, but also you want to get the luxury car, but also you have credit card debt because you like to go shopping. And then also we're forgetting about one major piece, which a lot of people didn't take care of during COVID, which I did, was student loans. There's a lot of people who still have their student loans who had money to pay on their student loans during COVID and did not pay any of it.
Right.
And that's only like 5 things, but there are other things. There are personal loans and there are other things. And it's like, you got all this debt pulling on you in different places, and then you want to get the house or you want to get the really nice apartment.
None of this of what you're saying is including children.
Exactly.
So having children, having people who want to take the girl out, people who want to take the man out, people who I want to vacation to Europe. I want to go on a 2-week vacation a year, but I'm not working, by the way, during that time. It's like, all right, type situation. But the biggest piece about real estate right now for people to get educated on, in my opinion, is making sure that not only do you have plan A, but whatever you have for plan A needs to be doubled. And so what I would call it is like doubling the down. If you feel like in your mind, okay, I'm ready, I want to get in the real estate market, I want to do it from a residential standpoint, I want to do it from a commercial standpoint, I want a single family home, I want a duplex, I want to own an apartment building, whatever.
No doubt.
If you are deciding, hey, here's my down payment, I'm going to get on this, what would be better is if you wait till you can get something cash. But that's like, if you want to live in California, Florida, New York, you might be waiting your whole life.
Yeah,
so if I'm wanting to get something down payment, okay, I got to double the down payment. Before I really get into this, I got to double the down payment and then start making sure all the other expenses in my life are on point. Like, if I'm going to be looking at, okay, how much do I spend on my food bill? How much do I spend on my play bill? How much do I spend on my vacation bill? How much do I spend on my car? How much do I spend on my insurance? Looking at all these things and going, how can I get myself to a point where all these things are at their minimums? What is the minimum insurance I can get to still have myself protected? What is the minimum I can spend on my TV entertainment, Am I spending $65 a month on TV entertainment, or am I spending $7?
Yeah.
Like, my food bill, if I'm spending $1,000 a month on food, or am I spending $150 a month on food?
Yeah.
Like, you got to make these decisions so that it's comfortable for you if and when you have an HOA, if you have a mortgage, if you have property taxes, if you have insurance. And, man, the people with kids.
Get the debt down.
Yeah.
And that's the funny part about that, even with the kids. It's like, kids are a financial responsibility just like everything else. And so I don't think everybody's thinking about the trade-offs. It's like, okay, maybe if you had kids, maybe that means you can't have a house now.
Right.
Maybe you can just have an apartment.
Right.
Or maybe if you don't have kids, you can get the house.
Right.
And then, or maybe if you got the really nice car, maybe you can't get the house, but you can get the nicer apartment.
Right.
So I think it's just understanding your financial trade-offs instead of like, no, I'm going to find a way to finance everything and do everything at the same time.
And that just begins with being in touch with your finances, like, which in school right now, I would say purposely, the government, they're not teaching finance on purpose.
And
they're not teaching, hey, here's how you understand the tax system when you have a job. Here's how you understand these ancillary things. They're making sure it's that way so there can be this lopsided understanding of like who's in charge, where's what,
who's getting the
what's
money,
what type situation. But nonetheless, if you're wise enough to educate yourself on the finances, you have to be on top of it. Like you and I are people who are consistently looking at, okay, where are our numbers right now? Where does this need to be allocated? How can we be able to do this? How can we be able to do that? And there's a lot of people who just quite frankly aren't. They're living in a situation where they're not sure. The answer to a lot of these questions are, I don't know. I don't know what I spend on food in a month. I don't know what like my month-to-month bill, but I still want that house.
Yeah.
But I still want to live by the beach. But I still want to live in the mountains or by the ocean or have a cabin in Lake Tahoe or whatever. Like, and those things don't equate. The math ain't mathin'.
Where's the money at?
Yeah, math ain't mathin' in that situation. So you got to make sure the math is mathin'. But transitioning on this, other investments right now, is there anything else you're interested in right now investment-wise that any of the people listening to this, any of our followers might want to check out?
I like stocks, so I personally I have interest in real estate, and I'm still deciding if I want to really dive into it, but obviously in this situation, not quite. But I'm very much into stocks, and I like buying stuff that pays me. So I got stocks that pay me dividends. I'm getting paid every month. I'm getting paid every quarter from them. And it's nice because I think that stocks that pay dividends are the true passive income, which is something that's super rare. So that's what I'm really into. I've been looking at some bonds and looking at some other things, but definitely stocks, and I'm very comfortable in dealing with stock market fluctuation, which I think is the biggest part of owning stocks.
Yeah, and I'm down with the stocks for sure too. There's a lot of things that I've checked out over time, some things that have failed, some things that have done really well. I was fortunate enough to get in on things like, Apple and Microsoft and Google and stuff like that. But then I've had some things that I've tried out that have flopped, and that's the reality of the stock market. But the mentality with that is like, all you need is one or two that hit well. A lot of people feel like who aren't educated on the stock market, you need, okay, it's either everything's going well or everything's going bad. It's like, that's not how it works. Like, you need one or two things to go well to fight off 10 things that don't go your way. As long as you're being savvy with your inputs, how much you put in. Don't put in more money than you have. And that's the big thing. But for me, things I would push people towards is like checking out CDs, checking out mutual funds. And again, a lot of people feel like you already have to have like some crazy amount of money to be able to do this. Like, for me, I really believe, and if you can put down $200 into something and see it grow, you learn a lot. If you can put down $300 in something and see it grow, you can learn a lot. So if you're a person who doesn't already have a Roth IRA, like, you got to get a Roth IRA. If you're a person who doesn't have, any kind of interest in stocks, go put $10 into a stock and just check it out and see. That's the beauty of the stock market, is there's things you can find out there, like on the startup, and take a chance. At $10, you're going to spend that on lunch anyway. So go put down $10 and see if you can learn something, and then push it forward and just get educated and put down 10 here and put down 10 here and learn what diversification is. And not only can it become something fun that you do, I'm not going to call it a game. It can be a fun activity that you can do, but it can help you long term, not only with the education piece, but just getting more savvy. There's nobody out there who's doing business or financials at a high level who's not involved in the things that we just talked about. 100%. There's not one person who's not involved in understanding, at least to some degree, of real estate, understanding stocks, understanding CDs, understanding IRAs, and that type of situation. It's going to help the future generations of them too. If you want to have financial freedom, if you want to have any kind of like generational wealth, that's the beginning to it.
I believe someone said there's like 3 ways to get rich. You either own a business, you invest in business, or you invest in real estate. I believe those are the only 3 ways that you can really do well financially. And if you look at anybody who's ever been successful, they've done 1 to 3 of those things. It's very rare that you're going to find a way to get rich or stay wealthy without doing one of those 3 things, or all of them.
Right. Bang, bang.
No doubt.
All right, so KJ's playlist. Let us know. What have you been listening to? Give us either 2 artists or 2 specific songs that we should be checking out.
I've been listening to something a little bit older. I've been listening to the Ray Shremmerd "Someone Said," which I don't know why. I've been on Ray Shremmerd a little bit, and then and I'm still in Lil Tecca, still into that. So those are 2 things that I'm jumping into right now.
Okay, Ray Shremmerd. Those guys still together?
I kind of.
Okay.
I think they're still together,
but they're 2 entities.
Yeah, I think Sway Lee is more independent, because I think everybody kind of realized like Sway Lee is like really, really good. And so his partner, I'm not sure about how much he's doing.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Those are what I'm into right now.
Love it. Okay. Well, we got to check that out. The reason we don't play that for y'all is YouTube is where this podcast is hosted, and we're not trying to get those copyright laws. So as we learn more and more about this YouTube space, y'all got to go look those up on your own. We're not going to be playing it for you.
No problems.
So check it out. All right. And pop culture right now, this is what we'll close up with today. You got this P. Diddy case, which is shaking the world of pop culture because he was a mogul. I mean, he's seen as larger than life, type of situation. You just got this situation crashing down. So comparing it to some of the previous situations we've seen the Epstein, we've seen the R. Kelly, we've seen the Harvey Weinstein, we've seen the Bill Cosby, and not to say this situation is symmetrical because everything right now is alleged, but it's not looking great. You've seen a situation where he's been indicted, he is in jail, he's been denied bail multiple times.
Suicide watch.
There's evidence piling. You've got more and more people coming out with cases, and while, yes, you can assume, a couple of those are far-fetched, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. Yeah. So with this situation, what are your thoughts? How do you feel like the world of pop culture is taking it? How do you think it's going to shake out? What are your feels?
I don't know. It's really interesting because it reminds me directly of the Epstein situation where so many people are involved who are rich and famous and in the industry, and then they did the same thing to Epstein. They're like, I didn't really know him. And it's like, no, you're on his island. And then I think it's kind of similar with Diddy, and a lot of people are like, but it's like, no, you were involved. Like, you went to the Diddy parties, you saw what was going on, and so I think everybody kind of, for the most part, just turned a blind eye to it. And I think what really got him in trouble was obviously the Cassie situation where he was chasing after her inside of the hotel. I'm like, that's a bad look. Like, that's one of the worst looks. Like, what if that didn't happen, it would be hard to have kind of everything else stick, but to see you coming out in the towel and like literally throwing her around and kick, I'm like, so there is teeth to what's happening. I'm like, if you can't put this stuff on video, it's hard to get facts and truths out of it, but that didn't help him.
Yeah, that video was video opened up the whole thing. I mean, again, I'm sure some of this stuff has been whispered behind the scenes, but it would only have this legitimacy with that proof. And that's, you could say that's for better or for worse. Like, obviously for the people who would be victims in situations like this and speaking on it and not being believed, like, it's tricky and it's challenging and it stinks. But at the same time, we're in this era right now where everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got the ability to be able to show this stuff. And although it sounds like he tried to pay to get that Cassie video to go away, that video didn't go away, and now that's the thing that might be his ultimate undoing. So my biggest question is going to be, is he going to out, some of these other people who are in this to try to preserve his own life in jail time, or are we just going to find a situation? I do not foresee a scenario where he is not going to jail. I do not foresee a scenario where he's found innocent. I don't think this is going to be like the OJ case. I don't think anybody's dropping the ball on this. So it's be pretty tricky to see a situation like that, but it's also just like disheartening for the world of culture. Like you want to believe in these people who are at the top of the food chain for a long time. And I'm not really a Donald Trump fan, but for a long time you feel like there's these people who we've given notoriety and these people who we've given cachet and like, oh, keys to the city, and that's the person we want to follow. We want to be like them. But to find out some of these things that are happening behind the scenes, and you just ask yourself, like, why? Like, when you have so much access, of course we learn having too much access is the thing that creates this I'm larger than life, I can do no wrong, I can do whatever I want kind of feeling. But it's like, it's gnarly, to find out where you're just like, really? Like, when you have carte blanche to anything you want, you have the ability to have anything you want, like, this is what you choose? Type situation. But we're going to find out how it shakes out. Like, right now, everything's alleged, but it is not looking good since that video. Like you said, that's one thing, like, at minimum, you're going to have to pay for what you did on that video. Even though it's, like, past the statute of limitations, like, they're going to make you pay for what you did on that video. That's, like, putting your hands on a woman like that, and they're not going to bode well to that in jail either.
And that video is kind of glue. Yeah. That video is kind of glue for everything else that everybody was wondering about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wild life. All right. Well, where you can find this, YouTube, you can search Business Relationship Sports with CA and KJ. You can check it out. We're going to keep coming and just build the subscribership. Please hit the like button, ring the subscription bell, and then leave a comment on what you want to hear for future episodes, how you felt about this episode, some topics that you really enjoy you want to hear in the future. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye.